Hello, my name is Fabian Scheidler, and I'd like to present to you my book The End of the Megamachine, a brief history of a failing civilization. The book explores the roots of the planetary crisis we are experiencing, that is to say, the crisis of life on Earth, of ecosystems, and the crisis of human societies, of the economy, and of our political systems. The book asks why the civilization that currently dominates the planet, and which is portrayed as the bearer of enlightenment and science, is unable to change course, even though it is well known that moving forward with a model of constant economic expansion is leading us to disaster. The book answers this question by telling a story. When we have trouble understanding someone's behavior, when we think they are crazy, it is sometimes useful to tell their story. The same is true with social systems, which are also made up of human beings. So this is the story of Western civilization. But this story is not told from the point of view of the victors or of rulers, but from the point of view of the people and of subjugated nature. Telling the story from this perspective allows us to dismantle the myths of modernity, myths that prevent us from understanding the structural reasons for the planetary crisis. The heart of the social and economic system that was formed at the beginning of modern times, its determining principle, is the endless accumulation of capital. That is to say, multiplying money in an infinite cycle of profit and reinvestment. This principle shows itself clearly, for example, in the world's most powerful economic institutions, the large joint stock companies. The 500 largest corporations now control 40% of the world's GDP. And these institutions have only one goal, firmly anchored in their legal construction: to multiply the capital invested. They must reach this goal at all costs, even if it means the death of the planet. Therefore, nature must be turned into a commodity, and humans into insatiable consumers. This is a monstrous invention of modernity, a kind of machine that swallows up the world in order to spit out money. A machine that cannot stop and that has no responsibility towards human societies or ecosystems, but only towards shareholders. Yet it is not only the economy that has developed according to this principle, but also, as I show in the book, modern science, technology, disciplinary institutions like schools, the military and wage labor, and above all, states. The modern, highly militarized state has developed in a co-evolutionary way with economic institutions. Far from being a counterweight, the state was inseparable from the economic institutions from the beginning. Today, this can be seen, for example, in the fact that very many of the multinationals could not exist without extraordinary subsidies. The fossil fuel sector, for example, is subsidized by $5 trillion each year, according to the International Monetary Fund. In this way, the states, that is to say the taxpayers, are financing the destruction of the planet. To understand the roots of the current crisis, we must go back to the time 5,000 years ago when the structures of domination, the domination of man over man and women, and of man over nature were formed, first in Mesopotamia and then elsewhere. I call these structures the Four Tyrannies. First of all, physical power, which manifests itself in, among other things, the militarized state. Second, structural violence, for example in property relations. Third, ideological power. And then, the tyranny of linear thinking, which assumes that man can direct and control nature as a sovereign commands his subjects. From these same tyrannies, the metallurgical complex was formed, which became the foundation for all financial systems and the military-industrial complex. However, the Four Tyrannies, which formed the core of antiquity's empires, had a flip side: the distress and powerlessness of the people. And it was right from this plight that something was born that would profoundly shape Western civilization: the apocalyptic thinking. We are part of a civilization that cannot stop imagining and creating the end of the world. The second part of the book begins at the dawn of modern times 500 years ago, when the Four Tyrannies were reorganized in a radically new way. Merchants and bankers financed the armament of states, and indebted states in return did everything to advance the accumulation of capital by monopolies, and especially by colonial and military expansion. The conquest of the Americas, Asia and Africa, the genocides, and wars of increasingly cataclysmic force have been the result. This violent expansion has been justified ever since by a missionary ideology that represents Western civilization as radically superior to all other cultures. Thus, an explosive structure at the economic, political, military and ideological levels has been formed, for which infinite expansion is an absolute necessity. It can never stop. It must cannibalize all societies and all resources until the planet collapses. It is obvious that the system is reaching its limits in the 21st century, as it is leading us into an increasingly chaotic, frightening process which poses extreme risks but at the same time offers opportunities for profound change. The emerging chaos includes climate havoc, species extinction, the degradation of fertile soil, the freshwater crisis and financial crises. But we are also having to deal with pandemics, such as COVID-19. Most of the new epidemics in recent decades have derived from wild animals whose habitats have been destroyed by economic expansion, for example, deforestation. Even much more severe pathogens than the current coronavirus could evolve if we continue with our economic model. Pandemics are an example of how the attempt to subdue and dominate nature in a linear fashion is doomed to fail. What we inflict on nature returns to us in an uncontrollable way. This is part of the failure of the Four Tyrannies, and therefore of our civilization. So we must get out under from the Four Tyrannies and the Megamachine. But such a profound transition cannot happen in a linear way either. It is inevitably a process with deep, increasingly serious ruptures in which junctures open up, either towards a complete collapse or towards a livable future. In the end, it will be the struggles of ecological and social movements that will play a decisive role. This means that each and every one of us, all our actions, can make a difference for our future.